2025. We're barreling into 2026. We're a couple of days away from New Year, and that's a big holiday in my family. We do Christmas, and that's a big get together, and we do usually ham and turkey. And then a week later, we do an even bigger dinner with a New Year's pita, and which is a tradition where I hide a gold coin, or a gold coin. No, it's not a gold coin. Coin wrapped in silver, or wrapped in aluminum foil, and then I hide it in the banista, and then whoever finds it gets luck for the year. So I don't know. It's fun, but there's so many people in my family now. I have to make 2 of them, so it's a lot of work. Anyway, that's coming up for me. But it is unbelievable what's happening. The silver market seems to be cracking, and with it, other precious metals. And that's weird, right? That's an interesting thing to see. The fraud in Minnesota, we're going to look at that this morning as well. Rumors of a bank collapse because the silver market's cracking. Trump is addressing housing. Ireland wants to ban anonymous social media accounts because, well, the free speech lockstep nonsense is happening. And what else? Rampant fraud. Rampant fraud. Trump meets with Zelensky, but mainly the biggest story right now is rampant fraud. And we're going to look at Ohio. We're going to look at some Minnesota stuff. We're going to look at other states. We're going to look at Canada and the fraud happening in Canada, because I've been saying, I think it's happening here. Yeah, it's happening here. We've got Ireland with similar fraud. We've got other countries who are noticing, holy smoke, there's a whole lot of fraud going on, and no checks and balances. And really the people who are supposed to be running the checks and balances are getting kickbacks. So there's a lot of problems, and it's very interesting. So there's lots to get to. Let's get to it. First, JD Vance is highlighting Nick Shirley, and he says this dude has done more for useful journalism, or far more use for journalism, than any winners of the 2024 Pulitzer Prizes. So yeah, yep. And the media has become a gatekeeper. The media is not something to inform you. You'd be better informed. I was watching on the Ontario storm. Anybody in Ontario yesterday, specifically Guelph, if you're around Guelph, holy cow, it was buckets of rain for hours. I couldn't believe how hard it rained for hours. And there was a lot of ice accumulation, but it was raining so hard that kind of stopped for a little while. But then it got warm enough that all the ice melted off. And now it's a skating rink because all that ice that was on trees was on the ground, and then it's frozen up now. So pretty wild stuff going on with the weather. But I was following an independent guy yesterday rather than the mainstream media's reporting of anything. And he gave me more on the ground, more granular, more interesting content than any of the mainstream media could. So we lost internet yesterday for a period of a couple of hours as well, because there was just so much rain and whatever. But I wasn't once tempted to turn on the television to find out what was going on. Even if I surfed the TV channels looking for music for dinner, but that didn't happen. So I just turned it off. Anyway, regardless. Nick Shirley is being highlighted by JD Vance for doing more for journalism. And yeah, the media are gatekeepers now. They're not there to inform. They're there to make sure that their newsroom doesn't go under. And if the government falls, then their newsroom might go under, because the new government might not fund it just like the old government does. And so, people might lose jobs. We don't want that. So everybody vote liberal. And, that's part and parcel of the point. Fugitive Caesar says, too long didn't read. The general sum of what we're finding out is that civil rights America, only white people are expected to obey laws. Every other ethnic group is allowed their Indian gas stations, their black PPP loans, their Somalian daycare frauds, Chinese nail salon money laundering, etc. And in Canada, it's your fentanyl dealerships, your cornering of the trucking market, your fake CDLs or your fake trucking license. All of that kind of stuff is all just fine for foreigners who are coming to Canada to, quote, help us by working. But if you're a Canadian who does this, somebody who was born in Canada, raised in Canada, grew up in Canada, paid taxes in Canada, that kind of stuff, then the weight of the law is going to be weaponized against you if you're a day late on your taxes. Holy smokeronis, right? How dare you, sir? But foreigners can come in and have fentanyl labs set up. No problem. And then when they get arrested and the lab gets, quote, shut down, the person who gets arrested is released the next day. Super weird. But yet we have people who were at Coots, and they were in remand custody, which is not getting processed properly for years on end. Two-tier legal system, right? So why would we want to be participating in this system? It doesn't make any sense. Let's talk about Minnesota. And actually, this isn't Minnesota. This is Washington State. Libs of TikTok says over 10% of daycares in Washington State are Somali. What are the odds? We are barely even scratching the surface with uncovering the Somali fraud. The scale of nationwide Somali fraud is insane. Yep. Same here. Same in Canada. Brian says, I did some very basic research on Columbus, Ohio, not Minnesota. Daycares in Columbus, Ohio that are taxpayer funded. Here's the very first one I looked up along with the Google Street View. So the childcare, it says, what's the name? I don't see the name of it. Search for early childcare and education programs. 161 childcare. Oh, the reason I didn't understand the name is because the name of the childcare is 161 Childcare LLC. So it's fake. They're a licensed childcare provider, and it doesn't look like a childcare at all. It looks like a dentist's office. It's a smoke shop. 161 smoke shop. So there you go. That's hilarious. Fraud, absolute fraud. And yeah, Sovereign Bra says, I think it's time for a nationwide tax strike. Understand the situation we're in. Hundreds of billions of dollars are being stolen from the American people and used to fund every kind of fraud imaginable. Ukraine? It isn't just Minnesota. This is happening nationwide. We are funding the destruction of our own country. Yep. Nailed it. American Truckers says, why did Minnesota add 50,634 drivers in 2023 when they typically only issue 2,900 per year? Then they quickly added another 43,000 the following year. Did FedEx and UPS move their headquarters to Minnesota? That's right. Like what's going on there? Why are we seeing all of these? Sorry, I'm muting the notifications. Why are we seeing all these new licensing things? What changed recently? And yes, something did change. So who did they give all these commercial driver's license to, CDLs to? Did an entire industry close and employees had to be retrained and reallocated? Maybe the second picture is an indication of why. So in Minnesota in 2023, this passed, Minnesotans can now apply for a driver's license no matter their immigration status, thanks to a new law that went into effect on October 1st, 2023. The driver's licenses for all law means that more than 80,000 Minnesotans can now apply for licenses. And look at that, all 80,000 of them applied for a commercial driver's license. Actually, 93,000 of them applied for commercial driver's licenses. So there you go. Opportunity and incentivization and looking the other way. There you go. And of course, here's the Minnesota Star Tribune. Autism Capital says, this is Minnesota's top newspaper. The number one news story is snow. So there you go. That's today's headline. Snow intensifies across Minnesota as blizzard conditions develop. In the daycares? Like what? Are you kidding? Okay. Yeah. Yep. Nick Shirley who? Right? I don't know what you're talking about. They're all in on it. They're worried that if the grift stops, they're going to get caught. But here's the caveat. If they get caught and they get arrested and arraigned and charged, right? You have a crime, then you get a court date. What happens after the court date? Well, you get released. Done. Because you're innocent, of course, because you didn't know, or you didn't mean to, or you're not a citizen here, so the laws really don't apply to you, or any of the other dozens of bullshit excuses that I've heard. Gunther says, outrage in Minnesota. Meet Judge Sarah West. There you go. There's Sarah West. What's the biggest problem in Western politics today? Woke white women, unfortunately. Woke, period. Anyway, the one who just threw out a unanimous jury verdict of guilty in a $7.2 million Somali Medicare fraud case. Jury deliberated less than 2 hours and convicted Abdifa Yusuf on all counts for stealing taxpayer dollars, fake billing, luxury cars, designer clothes on your dime. But Judge West, Democrat appointed, I wonder if she's even a lawyer. Like, I wonder if she's just somebody who, because they were doing this in, I think California, but they were doing this in the United States, where people who were being appointed as judges were not trained they'd not passed the bar. They were not trained in the law. They were not lawyers even. They were just people who were politically connected and made into judges. So I wonder if she's even a lawyer. Anyway, drops a 55-page bombshell. Evidence circumstantial. State didn't prove intent beyond a reasonable doubt. Acquittal granted. Fraud happened. Yes, she admits she's troubled by it, but Yusuf walks free. Oh, yes, the law is imperfect. I'm very deeply conflicted by this, but we've got to follow the law and let this fraudster walk free. Dustin says breaking Minnesota Senator Michael Holstrom is calling on the judge, Sarah West, to unseal the documents in the case where she overturned the jury's guilty verdict. The Yusuf was found guilty of stealing $7.2 million from taxpayers in the medical fraud scheme. I wonder if he had to give it back. Not guilty. Get out of here. Get out of here, you millionaire, you. Enjoy the money, okay? We'll see you for dinner later. Like, what? Is she getting kickbacks? You got to wonder, right? What is she getting from this? 0 Hour says, Ilan Omar's husband has closed all of his private businesses, removing all websites. The walls are closing in on the fraudsters of Minnesota. Yeah, but if they get caught, if they get in front of a judge, maybe the judge says, oh, you poor Somali person, you've been systemically racismized or something like that. Like, there's a problem with our legal system. And so because of that problem with our legal system, you have to be set free or something. And that's not great. Here's another example of a flaw in the legal system, or maybe the system is working exactly as intended, right? And I'm inclined to fall on that side of things, that the system is intended to prop up criminals while punishing anybody who questions the narrative. So anyway, Catturd says facing 10 years, that's it. Somali man Mohammed Nur is facing 10 years in federal prison, 10 years for stealing $48 million in taxpayer funds, the largest fraud in Minnesotan history, all under Tim Walz's watch. And again, it doesn't seem like anybody really cares. Here's FBI Director Kash Patel, according to Josh Dunlop. Okay. Josh says FBI Director Kash Patel on recent social media reports on the fraud being perpetrated in Minnesota. He says the FBI is aware of recent social media reports in Minnesota. However, even before the public conversation escalated online, the FBI had surged personnel and investigative resources to Minnesota to dismantle large-scale fraud schemes exploiting federal programs. Fraud that steals from taxpayers, that robs vulnerable children, will remain a top FBI priority in Minnesota and nationwide. To date, FBI dismantled a $250 million fraud scheme that stole federal food aid meant for vulnerable children during COVID. The investigation exposed sham vendors, shell companies, and large-scale money laundering tied to the Feeding Our Future network. So that's kind of the same stuff that Nick Shirley exposed as well. And the FBI is apparently dealing with it. But Nick Shirley uncovered $110 million in fraud in his day, out looking at just random addresses in Minnesota. And the FBI has dismantled 2.5 days of work, 2 and a bit days of work for Nick Shirley, right? So there you go. And I'm sure that dismantling it is a lot more work than exposing it on camera. I'm not saying that Nick Shirley is doing the FBI's job or anything like that, but I'm kind of surprised because Nick Shirley found so much fraud in such a short amount of time, all in the same building, right? Like a whole bunch of two medical health fraud buildings set up just with different shell companies. So because he found so much, you'd think that the FBI would have been able to take down more than 250 million seems like a paltry amount, considering how much we saw in that one 40-minute video, right? That's just my feeling on it, I guess. The case led to 78 indictments, 57 convictions. Defendants included a whole bunch of names that I would just fail at reading, but they're Ahmed Muhammad, Ahmed Ali, Hussein Farah, Abdul Nur, Asha Farhan Hassan, right? So this isn't like Chad Smith, right? This isn't, these aren't German names either. So just, right? These are all Middle Eastern names. These are all maybe Somali names. And so that's interesting, right? Is that racist to notice that kind of stuff? These criminals didn't just engage in historic fraud, but tried to subvert justice as well. This is the one name that I couldn't read. Muhammad Nur and others were charged for attempting to bribe a juror with $120,000 in cash. Brazen, right? Like that's brazen. Those responsible pled guilty and were sentenced, including a 10-year prison term and nearly $48 million in restitution in related cases. The FBI believes this is just the tip of a very large iceberg. We will continue to follow the money and protect children. This investigation very much remains ongoing. Furthermore, many are also being referred to immigration officials for possible further denaturalization and deportation proceedings where eligible. So there you go. But still, a glacial pace. Like, this is not getting cleaned up anytime soon. And these guys have been in office for almost a year, right? People say, what do you think, Nick Shirley? Do you think anything's going to change? And he says, it better. But man, I'm not trying to be black-pilled. I'm not trying to be a person who's like trying to demoralize you. But I look at our history of holding people accountable. I look at our history of being able to, like, Tim Walz is still the governor of Minnesota, right? Like, no, people might be calling for his removal, but like, that's a lot of fraud. Like, there's a lot of fraud here, and it looks like it goes right up to his office, right up to Ilhan Omar, right? It looks like there's a whole lot of shit hitting the fan, and he's standing there smiling away, and nobody's doing a damn thing to arrest him. So, is it Pam Bondi's failure? Is it Trump's failure? Is it the corruption level at the state level? Is there crossover that you can't, you can't arrest these people because reasons that I don't understand? I genuinely don't know. Anyway, here's the question to Nick Shirley.
Nick, your video's been viewed 93 million times. What
Over
do you think will be the
now.
result of this? Do you think that things will change because of bringing attention to this, or do you think it'll be much the same, swept under the rug and keep moving forward?
Yeah, there better be change. People are demanding it. The investigations have been launched just from that video alone. And so there better be change because, like I said, we work way too hard to be paying taxes. We work way too hard to be not knowing where our money's going. And at the end of the day, the people in the government, they work for us. We don't work for them. And so it's their responsibility to hold these people accountable. And so if there's not something that's happened, people are going to be very frustrated. And so if President Trump's watching this, it's time to really get down to nitty gritty and to make a difference in this place of Minnesota that is pretty much like Somaliland right now.
Yeah. Yep. And so, like, again, the structure of the United States is separation of powers. States are independent to a degree. So there's all sorts of, I don't understand the system well enough to understand where the failure is. And if I can pinpoint and say, yes, it's definitely the government failing here, or yes, the government looks corrupt at the state level here, or whatever, I don't know where the failure is. I have no idea where the failure is. It seems like sheriffs should show up and throw these people in jail. And it seems like there are a whole bunch of people who should be thrown in jail. And I have no idea why they're not doing it. But that seems true at the federal level too. There are people who it looks like, Trump is saying that Barack Obama ran a conspiracy to unseat and remove a duly elected president. That sounds pretty illegal, right? Like, we should probably have the next step in that. You should probably arrest the people, have indictments. You know what I mean? Like, but where's the failure there? So I don't know where the fault lies. The fault does lie somewhere, but are we ever going to know? And are we ever going to be satisfied? I doubt it. It's doubtful. Excuse me. Elon Musk says, traitor Tim Walz. Libs of TikTok says, what are the odds Minnesota has been conquered? So this is the old Minnesota flag. You can see in the top left there, it's got, is that a golfer? Is that somebody golfing? There's people walking around, and it looks like it looks very old American. It's got 1819, 1858, 1893, and there's like onions and garlic, and it looks like Minnesota, and there's stars and things like that. But the new Minnesota flag looks like the Somali flag. So that's weird, right? So it's just strange. It's not strange. It looks exactly like the colors of Somalia flags and a similar star, but not the same star. It's different than the old Minnesota star too. It's like an asterisk where the other one's a 5-point star. So weird, but not weird if you understand the context. And again, no arrests. So I'm sure it's fine. Andy Lee, let's talk about Canada and fraud. Andy Lee says, we sent money to a nonprofit in 2022 for, quote, digital flip books and cinema forums in the park to promote transgender and migrant rights in Arakawa. Sorry. Problem is, they haven't posted on their social media since 2021. Did they make the books? Hard to say. Their website doesn't work. So there's a problem loading the website. Yep, it doesn't work. So $36,000 just gone. just gone. Fraud, gone. Poof, gone. Insiders, maybe, but who knows. Canada Spends says $243.8 billion has been spent on Indigenous priorities since 2014. Annual federal spending rose from $10.3 billion in 2014 to $63.9 billion in 2024. I'm pretty sure we could go back to, look at 2023 and then 2024. I'm pretty sure we could go back to 2023 levels of spending, and I'm sure there would be no loss of any kind of anything. Looks like fraud to me. Looks like fraud, but all of it's fraud. All of it's fraud. I've seen a lot of evidence that the money that gets funneled into First Nations often gets taken by chiefs, and that doesn't trickle down to the regular citizens who are living on reserves, by and large. Sometimes you get places like First Nations who own casinos. Those guys are all fine. No problems there. It seems everything's okay. But other places get billions of dollars and the chief hands out millions and then gets kickbacks, and the chief stays in position of power. The people who keep him in position of power stay comfortable, and everybody else lives in squalor. And that seems wrong, but it doesn't seem like we have any oversight of it. And that seems weird. And it seems like this is a black hole of taxpayer money that yields no benefit for anybody. And so we should fix it. Like, it's obviously broken. We should fix it. It's like walking into your house and you see shutters broken, and instead of doing anything about it, you just get angry and blame the dog. It's like, you should fix it. You should fix it. It's our fault. We should fix it. Wealth Moose says this is policy malpractice. $1.7 billion to import 1,000 researchers while Canadian grads are fleeing en masse because funding, wages, and opportunities have collapsed. That's not buy Canadian, that's abandon Canadians, then backfill with press releases. You won't fix a brain drain by ignoring the drain. You fix it by paying, funding, and valuing your own talent first. So National Post is reporting federal government launches $1 billion plan to recruit top international researchers. No researchers in Canada. No, we don't know how to research in Canada. So we're going to import forwarders to do it for us, and they're probably going to use AI. So, yay. Perfect, right? It seems like, again, fraud. It seems like a black hole of money. Jeremy McKenzie says the system is fundamentally designed to exploit and abuse our people to the benefit of an unelected ruling class of foreigners. It works as intended. No elections or protests can change this arrangement. This system is theirs, not ours. Civil war will only further catastrophically weaken us while enriching and entrenching these enemies permanently. Nationalist revolution is the only path forward that offers a solution to the real problem. This is why nationalists are targeted and treated like criminals and prioritized as a threat, even above terrorists. We are the only legitimate resistance with coherent answers, not just in Canada, but across the Western world. So I was saying before, in Australia, is a group that's using that. I was talking about this on the Kitchen Table Talk yesterday, and I was tiptoeing around all the terminology because I was trying not to get YouTube dinged, and I'm still trying not to get YouTube dinged, but whatever. But fundamentally, the Australian guys are being targeted because they're using that German-style branding, let's say, to promote their ideology and say, like, Australia first. And so ultimately, I think if you ban an avenue of exploration, you say you can't go down this avenue, right? This street is blocked to you. You're not allowed down this street. And we go looking for answers everywhere else. It's like, there's a problem. We have to find a solution, and we're going to go looking for answers everywhere. And we go looking for answers like you're in a video game, and the answer's down that street. You say, that's the street that we have to go down. But the government has said that's illegal to go down that street. You're not allowed to go down that street. Anybody who goes down that street is a criminal. You're criminal just for talking about going down the street. But the truth is, that street holds the key, holds the answer, holds the truth that the government doesn't want you to know. And the answer is this. And I've talked about this before as well. I said, I think it's Norway, but maybe Switzerland, Sweden. There's a small Nordic country that's under 10,000, that has oil wealth, under 10 million people. The population's like 8 million people. And they're able to manage themselves in a sane way. And somebody wrote a whole paper saying this is probably the solution, because accountability, the balance of big systems and accountability breaks after roughly 10 million people. After you're managing more than 10 million people, the accountability thing gets too big. It unwinds itself, and you can't watch it. You can't keep an eye on it properly. And so we have that problem over and over again in Canada. The population exceeds that break point, and so we have all this fraud, which we're kind of going through now. And so I was saying that's probably the solution, which is nationalistic, which is saying this group of people is going to be managed this way. It doesn't matter what you guys do. This is what we're going to do. And this is a nationalistic thing. It's not open borders. It's, a controlled border, 10 million people tops. That's it. You can't come in if there's more than 10 million people, no way, that's not going to happen. Right, like it is by definition, the antithesis of what we are doing now. And they don't want us to talk about that in a way that's familiar, because they've made it illegal. They've made it the verboten street. You're not allowed to go down that street, but that's where the answers are. And so it's weird, because it seems like they know that. It seems like they are aware that that's where the answer is. That's where the answer lies. And they don't want you going down that street. Now, I'm not saying that that's the ideology we should all adhere to or whatever. I'm just saying that these things have been manipulated. History has been manipulated in the same way that our newspapers have been manipulated. And maybe the answers lie in what used to work, what worked. And what's not working now is that we've switched over to communism. And that's the problem. And we need to fix it. We need to fix it. There's nobody else going to fix it. Right? It's like your mom's not going to come in the room and fix it for you. Your grandpa's not going to come in the room and fix it for us. Trump's not going to come in the room and fix it for us, even though people want him to. It's not going to happen. We have to fix it for ourselves. Anyway, Jeremy McKenzie continues and says, support your local nationalist cause if you are unwilling to be a slave to the global finance and unelected war profiteering businessmen. Or continue playing children's games with everyone else and continue watching everything our families loved and fought for evaporate under a deluge of virtue signaling and finger pointing. You always have a choice. We've made ours. I love my family and friends too much to hide inside the comfort of the lies sold by cheap, rich pedophiles. Yep. So I don't think that he's far off. I don't think that he's wrong. I think he's pointing to the street that we're not allowed to talk about or go down. And he's saying that's where the answer lies. So do what you want to do. And Second Sons and Jeremy McKenzie's outfits have made their choice because of what's going on, and because the solution doesn't seem to be in the House of Commons. Why would Pierre Poilievre hide 28 minutes? Oh my gosh, I can't believe how long the show is. Ridiculous. Why would Pierre Poilievre pass the Liberal budget by hiding Andrew Scheer behind some curtains? Who would trust the Conservative Party of Canada after that? Who, right? Why don't they want to come on my show and explain the strategy? Come on my show and explain why you hid Andrew Scheer behind the curtains there, Mr. Poilievre. Let's have a conversation, right? I'll be super nice to you, I promise. Michael O'Keefe is talking about Ireland and the fraud happening in Ireland. He says, similar to what's happening in Minnesota, an investigation into child care facilities in Ireland last year revealed that 7 of the top 10 highest paid companies responsible for looking after vulnerable kids are operated by African or Muslim migrants. It also revealed massive fraud with forged documents used to secure sums of up to €1 million per year per child. Below are the top 10 private companies paid the most by the Irish government to house vulnerable children. We've talked about this before. Mohammed Yusuf Beg and Farah Miza are foreign. So he lists Comet Care Limited is Irish. Wisp Bay is no information. Victoria Healthcare Organization is Samson Olsley. They're foreign. Of the top 10, a bunch of them are foreign. And it is the same kind of fraud, but again, it's not exactly apples to apples. Here is the Essex bloke says the UK's second largest city is bankrupt due to illegal immigration. And yes, again, this is another kind of fraud. They're bankrupting using all sorts of entitlements, like I don't speak English, you have to accommodate me. And then translations are costing hundreds of thousands of dollars. Pounds. Here we go.
I didn't see immigration as the same problem as UKIP did in the day. Because the people who were coming in were lots of Latvians, Poles and Czechs who came here to work. They came here to work and did work and contribute to society, in which case that...
I wanted to show you this because they're trying to conflate this idea that, yeah, of course we don't want bums coming in who don't work, but the people who are coming into work, we really need them, and they're great, and they're super good, and they're just as good as you, and they're just as good as me, and so on and so forth. That may be true, but you need to build your own country and stay in your own country, because having incentivized people coming to Canada, not working. Incentivized people coming to the UK, it's not working. Anyway, he makes the argument that they should... that it's not, well, I'll let him continue, I guess. Let's carry on.
That argument you just made would be perfectly valid. We do need these people coming into work, although with the caveat that we have lots of young people in this country who have developed a lifestyle of dependency who don't want to work, which is another issue in its own right. But if you look at the people coming at the moment en masse in the boats, they're not here to work. They're not here to work.
The backdooring, blaming of UK citizens who don't actually want to work is another false misdirection. People want to work, and they don't want to work in slave conditions. They don't want to work in a situation where if you work 40 hours a week, you can't afford rent. They don't want to work in that situation. But yes, people in England do want to work. They want to have jobs. They want to have a way to pay for their lives.
Well, they're not like the Ugandan Asians who were all entrepreneurs, shopkeepers, workers.
They're all of them. I just can't, like, all of them. They're all, every single one of them. They're all just great. They're wonderful people, and they deserve to come to England and have England, and they could take England. And, you know, those lazy British kids who don't want to work should, you know, sit there and rot in their parents' house. Deluded, delusional, unbelievable things. Tommy Robinson says, if they can't speak English, then they shouldn't be here anyway. Absolute piss take. Outcry for over $12 million or £12 million cost of translators for migrants in benefit claim disputes. So that's part and parcel of what's bankrupting the cities. And so paying for translators? Like, no. Deport. Paul Weston says, one of the questions which I mull over repeatedly in sleepless dawns is this: is it really possible that a few thousand psychopathic people with political and media power in the West can essentially rid their countries of millions of native people, commit genocide in their pursuit of empowering a socialist ideology, which only yesterday murdered tens of millions of Europeans in order to enforce a political ideology which economically, morally, and spiritually bankrupt their own nations? Is this really possible? And if so, is it our fault for allowing it to happen because we would rather watch football than storm the Bastille? It's not about rather watching football than storming the Bastille. It's that you've watched people storm the Bastille, proverbially, and then you watch Tamara Lich get thrown in jail, and the Coots guys get thrown in jail, and Chris Barber almost lose his truck, and that just finished from 2022, and we're almost going into 2026. So there's a price to be paid, even for people who are successful heroes of, you know, of freeing the world essentially from the COVID madness. And that was the truckers. The Canadian truckers started that and ended it, right? And unfortunately didn't take it far enough to end our government's grip on Canada. But it's one of those things where if you have that incentive structure, if you look at those things and even the successful things that happen, because the Canadian truckers was one of the most successful protests in Canadian history, are framed as negative, it's difficult to rally people to the next thing, right? And we've seen convoys and people split, wedge, you know, we shouldn't have another convoy now because it's XYZ. And then other people saying, well, you know, I was just trying to help, and so on and so forth. There's all sorts of interesting things, but no incentive for people to cotton on to anybody. Look at Trump supporters. If you're a Trump supporter, you're not allowed to be an open Trump supporter because they will come after you. If you wear a MAGA hat, they say that's akin to wearing a KKK hat, right? And so there are crazy disincentives for people to get behind a nationalistic candidate who says Canada first. And go back to my comments about what Jeremy McKenzie's doing. Do I think he's wrong? Absolutely not. I don't think he's wrong. But if you had a nationalist party, look at what look at the headwinds the Dominion Society is facing already, just for saying Canadians are a specific group of people with a specific culture. We are not just a big melting pot of anyone from anywheres. We have a specific culture. We are a group of people. This is them. And we want to protect that group. And they're getting pushback, right? And so the second you start supporting that, the Trump style accusations will come your way. I can't believe how long this show is. I'm sorry that I've gone so long. It's unbelievable. But Nick Hudson says an alternative framing is that it is possible that a few thousand extremely powerful criminals act in their own interests without cleaving to any particular state, ethnic, or religious interest. Is it possible that such people see the rest of humanity as a means to their ends, and that those ends might include sharing the planet with fewer people, especially fewer of those more likely to threaten their interests? Is it possible that they would see centralized systems, whether you label them as technocracy or socialism, as facilitating the achievement of their goals, and that they would fear the people of the power of decentralized, multi-dimensional, and fractal priorities? I don't like the victim-blaming aspect of your rumination. The process of grooming people into perspectives on reality that are both broad and false has been gradual and massively resourced. When a false idea is embedded in an internally consistent matrix of other false ideas, correcting it entails dissonance so great that it's almost impossible to undertake for most. So when you get told, what he's saying here is, like, when you get told COVID is the worst thing ever and it's super scary and it's really, really bad, blah, 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 it's really hard for somebody like me to come in and say, like, they're wrong, they're lying to you, because the amount of dissonance to get my signal higher than the signal of the powers that be would be next to impossible. So people aren't going to listen to me broadly, right? They're going to listen to the CTV, CNN, all that stuff, and they're lying. And so it's difficult to overcome that kind of stuff. I think that's true. With that, we've got to say goodbye to the stream. It's a long one today, so sorry about that, everybody. If you want the whole show, head over to Canada.